I mostly read public domain books here on Glenn Reads Books to You, and they were written a long time ago, so they're usually racist, or sexist, or bigoted, but in there somewhere is a story, and that's why those stories are famous. Other times, I read works from independent authors, and they're delightfully not racist, but they might have adult language or adult situations, like, making sex. So that's your warning, but I'm sure you're grown up enough to handle it. Don't write to me complaining. Ba-da-bum-ba, who's got great knees? I'm the guy with great knees. Da-da-da-ba-da, who's got great... Oh, son of a... All right, fine. Take a seat, you little idiot. I was just reflecting on the fact that my knees are fine. I haven't recorded in a month or over a month because I hate my show, but I've got a plan to love my show again. But before that, in this month, I went to Germany. I've learned to focus on my job, my career. I found spirituality, and I fixed my own knees. Went to physical therapy because my knee hurt all the time. They said, your knee's healthy, your knee's fine. It's just the kneecap moves around. They thought my kneecap needs to be pushed up. Push that kneecap up. It's probably pushing its way down. That's the reason why it hurts so much. So then they show me how to tape it. They make me do all these leg exercises, and I did the exercises, and my legs looked fantastic. I had muscles in my legs, bulging, looking glorious and sexy. I considered shaving them because I look great when I sweat. But it still hurt all the time, constantly. I'm like, what the hell am I doing this for? Then all of a sudden I'm like, what if I tape my kneecap pointing down, like pushing it down? I did that, and all of a sudden I fixed my own problem. I was hiking around Germany, looking like a healthy German man. And then I came home and did some more. I did stuff in my yard with a knee, and then I finally take the tape off, and my knee is 100% fine. So I should get into my own physical therapy and stop paying money to doctors that claim to be Brittany, I don't respect you, Brittany. Welcome to the Glenn Reads Gothic Horror to You mansion. It's a fun little bit where I pretend to live in a mansion and not just recording in my basement. This is where I read the hottest public domain books and short stories. This week, we're going to start reading Ringstones by Sarban. Want to learn about the author? Sure, I hope so. I stole this from Wikipedia. His name is John William Wall. Whatever. He was born the 6th of November, 1910, and he died the 11th of April, 1989. John William Wall, whose pen name was Sarban, was a British writer and diplomat. Wall's diplomatic career lasted more than 30 years, but his writing career as Sarban was brief and not prolific. Ending during the early 1950s, Sarban is described in the Encyclopedia of Fantasy as a subtle, literate teller of tales, conscious of the darker and less acceptable implications that underlie much popular literature. Wall cited the supernatural fiction of Arthur Machen, not looking it up, and Walter de la Mare as influences on his work. I could talk about some of the fun facts I stole from Weird Fiction Review, and also some of the fun facts that I stole from Jimena Ramirez. But I'm not. I'm going to talk about how I hate my show. But because of my show, I read a book called Ringstones that I actually liked, and I'm like, ooh, gothic horror or gothic romance. These two just boring stories of walking around a castle. It always has a woman on the cover, like running in a nightgown outside a castle, desperate. I'm like, why do I like these things? Why are they soothing to me? That's the grandfather clock telling me to shut the hell up. But basically, that's the direction my show is going in now. So we're going to start with the book that started it all, Ringstones. All right, why don't you get yourself settled, you little turd. Why don't you, I'm a little out of practice. It's been over a month, so if I fuck up a lot, fuck you. None of this matters. It's a show that no one listens to. But I'm into it again, because I'm going to read the kind of books I like, instead of just reading crap that I didn't care about to begin with. Here we go with Chapter 1 of Ringstones by Sarban. The reason why I, and not Piers Dubourg, have undertaken to write the introduction and conclusion to Daphne Hazel's story is that I possess a typewriter. Yes. And Piers Dubourg does not. At least, that's the reason Piers gave for not doing it, and it seemed cogent until the ache in my shoulder blades made me examine his argument more critically. The real reason, I now suspect, is that if I had not done it, neither of the other two would. And I was sufficiently interested to want to see the story properly finished off, though insufficiently experienced to foresee the labor of it and, in fact, the impossibility of it. I discovered too late that I could not write the conclusion of the story. But still, I have for my pains a copy of Daphne Hazel's manuscript. Piers has kept the original, and the rest may pass as annotations of the text. Do they have copying machines back then? Maybe they did. He kept the original. Would he have someone scribe it out for him? He could just sit down and type it himself. I had arranged by letter to spend the last few weeks of the long vacation in Northumberland or walking on the border with Piers Dubourg. He met me at the station and we went out to his suburb on the trolley bus. As we turned into Northumberland Street, the broad sunlight blazed on the gilt of the only landmark I have in Newcastle. Verp. It always seemed to me, said I, one of the more whimsical eccentricities of the English character, that this bleak city, this soul-constricting agglomeration of granite and grime, where the people seem to have been born, with overcoats on their backs and rich bidism in their hearts. All right, I'm looking up whatever the hell that word is. There's nothing for it. Yeah, there's nothing for it. Rich habitism. All right, fuck it. In their hearts, should have erected for its tutelary deity a figure of Caligulan luxury. A naked golden girl. I can never quite believe it. Does anyone else ever see it, I wonder? Oh, and yet once, I suppose, the design for it must have been passed by a sober and completely clothed board of directors. How, I wonder, did some mad journeyman of the Northern Goldsmiths Company cast a spell on the board and beguile them with a dream he had of the Emperor's workshops in Byzantium? Or did some incredible, top-headed, dunder-rearied director returned from an eastern tour haunted by the image of a goddess poised in the marble portico between golden sun and violet sea, there where the light weave lisps Greece? Or was it a moralist who posed her there above the clock to say to thoughtless youth, behold, pleasure patheth, but goldeth endureth? I screwed that up. It's been over a month. Or beauty escapes from the bonds of time, suggested Piers in a tone implying that he could fit you a moral to any fable from stock. Hadn't it occurred to you that it might have been the last wild nymph of Northumberland bagged by a chairman after lunch on that memorable 12th of August, 1866? Yeah. Well, I might question the strict accuracy of that, quote, bagged, unquote. I said, but there's one insuperable objection to nymphs in Northumberland. That's your climate. If you insist on classical fauna, well, I'll go so far as to allow you satyrs, because satyrs are comfortably accommodated with hair breeches. Oh, but I never saw a nymph that I call really adequately attired to stand up to your confounded nethering east wind. Oh, God, he showed him. Well, they might have been migrants, said Piers. Summer visitors like swallows. Your objection wouldn't hold this summer. Northumberland's as hot as Arcady. In fact, why shouldn't they hibernate and only come out in exceptional summers? Wouldn't you say a sun like this might lure more than one sort of shy creature out of hiding? Oh, he looked at me rather oddly and laughed. That's a possible materialistic explanation, which I put forward, not very seriously, to account for something curious I've got to show you. This better be good, because this guy's full of shit. That stopped my speculations about the Golden Girl. But before I could find out what was on Piers' mind, we had arrived at the stop near his house. I jumped down and clattered down the steps of the trolley bus, slowed down. The de Bourgs live in a tall old house on a quiet street not far from Town Moor. In front it looks upon a tract of allotments, which once I believed was a public garden or a cricket pitch or something less utilitarian than it is today, while behind the windows of the house gave on to an alley cat's haven of higgledy-piggledy rooftops. I love the word higgledy-piggledy. Outhouses and sheds, a labyrinth of blackened bricks and mortar, looking perhaps even more dreary under the September sunshine than it had under the thick cloud of gray curtains of rain that had veiled it for the whole of my last visit in the Easter vacation. I had penetrated the labyrinth several times, for in the heart of it is a little square surrounded by a tumble-down black stone cottage. What does tumble-down mean? I see this in a lot of British literature. They say tumble-down cottage. We're looking it up. We're going to finally solve this thing. A building or structure falling or sunken into ruin. Okay, well, that's just a really cute British way of saying it's a shithole. Blackstone Cottages, which Piers declares was once the village green, and in this square stands an Admiral Benbow. But I would never attempt to steer course from the Admiral, let alone away from him, without Piers for pilot. We had a northern high tea, which was protracted to something near the southern dinner time by cheerful conversation with Pierre's mother and father. Then, when Miss de Bourg had turned down our not very insistent offer to help wash the pots, they're lazy men, we went out and boarded the Admiral, where we found entertainment enough to delay us until supper time. Our help in washing up the supper things was not scorned, I remember, or perhaps it was not noticed in time for objection to be made, for Pierre's father had got fairly launched at the supper table on tales of his boyhood in Connemara, and was not to be interrupted by the mere trifles of domestic routine. So we all four moved in the kitchen, and pots were washed among us while we followed him through a long story about a joiner's apprentice, a corpse, a screwdriver, a top hat, and a stone jar of whiskey. It was late when Piers and I went upstairs, but we did not go straight to bed. No, we climbed a further flight to one of the little attic rooms under the roof, which Piers uses as his own study. Oh, there we sat, and as we have sat many an hour between a night and its morning in his rooms or mine at Christ's, smoking our pipes. Oh, I was going to say in silence and mutual understanding, but Newcastle beer, unlike the quiescent gripe water sold under the name in some parts of this realm, retains in these times a certain independence of action. Oh, so the mutual. By the way, Newcastle beer, it still exists. I've had it, and you might as well be drinking Beck's or Pabst. So the mutual understanding was not entirely silent. Still, it was inarticulate for a long time until Piers remarked, "You've heard me talk about Daphne Hazel?" "I have then," I replied. "Sorry, but I always begin to pick up the Celtic idiom after listening to your father for an hour or two. That's the weakness of your student languages, always the more attentive to the manner than the matter of the discourse." But what about her?" "Well, she's a sane sort of person," he observed. That's the thing to say. "You ever meet my friend Stephen?" No, I've heard you talk about him. What about him?" "No, he's sane." You mean her lucid intervals come fairly close together?" That's a way of asking that. "Well, that's a satisfactory condition, ain't it? What's remarkable about that? Except its rarity, of course." "You know, she and I... we're good friends at school. We've written to each other at intervals all the last year while she's been at Towerton. She's training to be a gym teacher. I hadn't heard from her for some time, though, until yesterday when I received a communication. Telepathic, telegraphic, or merely postal? That's pretty clever. Well, written anyway and sent by post. Well, Way to shit on that joke. And that's shaken your faith in her sanity? Ah, well, nothing's ever quite what it seems. But what are the exact grounds of certification? Well, I remember that Pierce took some time to reply. And the little I knew about Daphne Hazel up to this time is soon told. Pierce had mentioned her to me quite often because he had a crush on her. In the 2 years I had known him. And I had an impression of a lively, intelligent, level-headed girl who had taken with him a leading part in all the sixth form activities at their school and had been somewhat lonely when he, being a year older, went up to Cambridge, and she stayed on another year at White Hill Secondary School. I imagine she must have been reckoned a clever girl. She seemed, from his talk, to have been as interested in books as he was. Yes, but she wanted to get out of that predestined academic grooves laid down for 90% of secondary school, boys and girls who go on to higher school certificate. A training college, or university if they're lucky, and then a job in an elementary or secondary school. She was unhappy at home. She wanted to get away and do something different, and she thought she was doing it by getting a scholarship to Towerton Physical Training College. There's a college just for being sporty. Piers obviously wished that she had gone up to Cambridge. Oh, the oddity is slight enough, he said. It's not so much a thing she writes about as that it is she who would write about them. That filled me with forebodings, but I knew my duty when Piers begins to talk about literature. You mean that up till now you've assumed that she enjoyed the possession of what a plain man would call a healthy mind? Oh, if you're that plain man, yes, he said. And another thing to bear in mind is that a place like Towerton, she's not likely to have come under influences that would have encouraged the germination of elvish fantasies and eerie illusions. I take it that a physical training college is the sort of place where mens sana in corpore sano is inscribed in letters 6 foot high on the hygienically tiled walls of every well-ventilated cubicle, where a day that begins at 6 a.m. with a cold shower and is divided equally between the gym and the playing field, with brief intervals for wholesome, balanced meals, leaves the body so drowsed with healthy exertion that the minute it tumbles into bed, its tenant mind has no option but to draw the blinds likewise and slumber into a blissful blank until cheerful morning bell peals out the brisk air of the day again. Christ, I said. It sounds like the seamy side of a concentration camp to me. Was it for this that they hanged the beast of Belsen? I think this book was written after World War II. And he's making a concentration camp joke. Okay, I'm not going to hate this author. I looked into him. He doesn't seem like a bad person. He actually wrote a book that was... or a story that was anti-patriarchy and stuff. So it's like, this is apparently an advanced person for his time, but a concentration camp joke, honestly? Well, some antiseptic odor of sanity did breathe from her letters from Towerton. True, she's only been at this temple of Freud Durchcraft for a year, and she had imagination, but it seemed to me from her letters up till now that her powers of invention under control. In fact, I'm much more likely to spin fairy tales for the fun of them than she is, and yet... ... Damn it, Piers, you're very mystifying, I said. Stop yetting, I'm not looking it up, and tell me what she's written. I haven't often noticed you being perturbed by the eccentricities of your friends, and for my part, I can't see why even a gym teacher shouldn't occasionally skip up a ladder of lordly lofts of Bedlam and come down with a straw or two in their hair. After all, they shake out. Piers got up and opened the cupboard in the corner of the room where he keeps his papers. He brought out a stiff-backed exercise book. You know, he said, pausing with this in his hand, she got a job at the Long Vac at a place up here in Northumberland. She mentioned it to me in the last letter I had from her before their term end. It seemed the sort of thing that would interest her, and that she'd do very well looking after some foreign kids. Oh, I was hoping I could see her up here, and I was waiting to hear the address of the place so that we could fix something up. Well, Bert, she hasn't written to me since, until yesterday, when I got this. I took the book and flicked the pages over. Oh, it was full of legible-looking handwriting. It's a longish thing, Pierce said. It's getting late now. Would you like to take and read it sometime before you get up tomorrow and tell me what you think about it? I feel that I weigh the duties of friendship rather ungraciously against the fat exercise book for a moment before I resign myself to saying, provided you allow me to get up at my usual hour, I might manage it. And on that, we parted for the night. But I didn't really want to lose any sleep over Daphne Hazel's quote-unquote communication. To tell the truth, I was afraid that the book threatened a lengthy exercise in self-analysis, some masterpiece of introspection, no doubt absorbingly interesting to Daphne Hazel and considerably so to Piers, who I think has a crush on her, but not at all me, because he's never met her. I bet if he did, he'd probably have a crush on her. I couldn't even exploit it for the purposes of my tripos. All right, fine, we're going to look up tripos. Tripos, the final honors examination for a BA degree. Okay, it's just college shit. I'm not a college boy. I only went to college for 2 years. I am reading Oriental languages and should find a dissertation on the permutations of the infirm letters more instructive and more entertaining. I fully intended, therefore, to leave the manuscript until my morning cup of tea put me in a more indulgent frame of mind. But a document is a document, and I could not help but give a glance as I smoked my last pipe in bed. Alas, for prudent resolution, I stayed awake until I had finished the book, and that was at some hour in the morning, the existence of which I am normally loath to admit. He gets embarrassed by staying up late. This is the most introduction of Daphne Hazel's story needs. And here it follows, faithfully typed out by my own 2 forefingers. Oh, he types like a chicken? I had to force myself to learn how to type with all 5 fingers. Well, 10 fingers. All right, screw off. It's been a month. He's just doing this 4 fingers. All right, Daphne Hazel's story, 1. And I'm warning you, this is going to be really boring. Up until about halfway through. So that's why I'm doing a longer episode for this. Okay, whatever. I'm just warning you, it's going to be boring. It's boring for me to read. It's boring for you to listen to. But if you stick it out, it's actually fucking insane by the end of the book. So, Daphne Hazel okay, one evening, shortly before the end of last term, 3 or 4 of us, all juniors, were having coffee at Miss Corrigan's room, as we usually do 2 or 3 nights a week. Miss Corrigan lectures on anatomy, biology, the chemistry of the body, and dietetics. We all like her. She's unconventional, and when she lectures, there's some fun, and even a dry subject like chemistry. There's a standing invitation to juniors and seniors alike to have coffee in her room after dinner. And our particular gang has acquired a habit of using her room almost as a common room, or so she tells us. A nursery. I remember the people who were there that evening. There was Connie Webster, Moo, Jordan, Teresa, Faldingworth, that's a name, Mary Paxton, and myself. We had finished the first-year exams that day and were in a mood of hilarious relief. Oh, we are noisy and inclined to throw ourselves about all over the place. And we quieted down after a while. Connie Webster and Moo Jordan, I remember, had been wrestling over a photo on Corrigan's divan. I say Corrigan's divan, and they sprawled rather untidily there. The rest of us lay inelegantly but comfortably on the carpet round Corrigan's chair. Some began to talk about what she was going to do in the VAC. What the hell's the VAC? I don't know. They're just never going to tell us. And so we came to gossip about holidays. Moo Jordan said that he had applied through the Students' Union for a holiday job in Holland. Somebody else said that she wouldn't mind having a job during the VAC, I guess just vacation. And then Miss Corrigan said, well then, why doesn't one of you take this on. And she fished a letter out of the stuffed paper rack beside her chair. It's an old acquaintance of mine, she said, who wants someone to coach 2 or 3 foreign children during the summer holiday. It's up in Northumberland. Is that the teacher? There's nothing more gross than a teacher that hangs out with their students. I don't care if you're a college professor and your students are all adults and you're hanging out with them. I don't respect college professors. Like, you've taken a career where you teach kids, and then you, go to their parties, or you have parties where they come. It's just weird. It's like a power thing, and also you prefer to hang around people that are younger than you and hope you give them a good grade. It's just weird. We asked rather indifferently what the place was like. Well, I can't tell you that, she said, because I was never there. My friend's been buried these many years in archaeology. So maybe you won't be able to step across the house for folio volumes or see across it for the dust rising from them. And it's beyond conjecture what sorts of little imps the foreign brats will be. But if you likes to take a risk, here's the address. She tore off the top of the letter and dropped it into my lap, no doubt because I was the nearest. Later, I showed it around, but no one was particularly interested, so I kept it by me for a few days. I did not, just then, think seriously about doing anything about it myself. But as term end approached, however, and I heard all around me talk of going away to this and that exciting-sounding place, I began to wish that I had something fixed up for the holidays instead of just having to go back to White Hill and spend all long summer with Aunt Elizabeth and Uncle Fred. Someone asked me where I was going for my holiday, and the vision I had then of White Hill and the deadly dullness of Green Street determined me. I took out a scrap of paper again and wrote to the address it gave. Dear Marcus Ravlin, Beaches Hotel, Great Russell Street, London. On that day of term, I received an answer. It asked if I would call on Dr. Ravlin at my hotel any afternoon between 4 and 6 during the following week. I had already packed up, so I decided to go up to London at once. I took my trunk with me and left it at Waterloo Station cloakroom while I went by bus to the Great Russell Street. I was a little worried about my expenses, as after paying the fare from Towerton to Waterloo, I had only £4.10, left out of my scholarship allowance, the next payment of which was not due until the beginning of the autumn term. I didn't know how much it would cost to spend a night in London. Miss Corrigan had given me the name of a hotel, but she was vague about the price, out of which my £4.10 I had to pay my fare to White Hill, which is £2.12 and 4 pence. I told you this is going to be boring. I had been feeling rather shy of going by myself to a big London hotel, but I found that Beaches was quite a small place, and the hall porter was very kindly. Horny. When I asked for Dr. Ravlin, he took me at once along a corridor and showed me into a high room furnished with old-fashioned mahogany and horsehair furniture. A small gray-haired man was sitting at a table, on which I remember a number of books lay open. I saw Dr. Ravlin then as a neat elderly gentleman, dapper in an old-fashioned way. He wore what Daddy used to call a Gates of Heaven collar with a white spotted blue bow tie. What's a Gate of Heaven collar? Does it just show a lot of chest? Like his chest is heaven, the gates have opened, and a dark gray suit, with which all 4 buttons of the jacket buttoned. I thought his manner was rather formal, and my nervousness wasn't helped very much by his trick of cocking his head sharply from one side and raising his bushy eyebrows at each answer I made, as if I surprised him. The horsehair easy chair he invited me to sit on had been made for some kind of anatomy quite different from mine, for I slipped and slid about it and felt anything but easy. He questioned me about my course at Towerton, my age, hobbies, games, and so on. And his questions were so much at random that I began to suspect that the business of engaging a temporary governess or a coach or a nursemaid or whatever I was supposed to be was something out of his line. He asked me about my family, where I lived and how long I lived there, and what other relations I had besides my aunt and uncle. He made no comment, except, quote, exclamation point, unquote, when I told him I had none. then about my school and my childhood, until I think he had pretty well covered my complete biography. How he put the tips of his fingers together, power pyramid, and appeared to think hard. Then he said, "Very good, Miss Hazel, very good. Now, you must want to ask me something." He cocked his head to one side, waiting. "Children, sir," I said, not knowing at all what questions I ought to ask. "Do they speak English?" Some, yes. One of them speaks English quite well, yes, and you will find him quite far advanced." They're boys then, I said. One boy, 15 or thereabout. Yes, 15. You have no experience of teaching boys? Well, no, I said, but I haven't had any experience of teaching at all except 2 weeks school practice, and that was simply taking little girls for gym. "Well, it's not important," he said. "What I envisage is not regular lessons by any means. After all, it's the summer holiday, eh?" He smiled, a rapid little smile. "What I conceive to be most useful is that the children should be encouraged to practice their English with someone capable of correcting it, and that there should be someone there to keep an eye on their general health and welfare. I am somewhat occupied myself." Their parents aren't with them?" I asked. Oh, no, as you say, their parents aren't with them. These children belong to some very old friends of mine. They like being at Ringstones, and I like them to be there. But I feel now that my habits and pursuits, being what they are, I cannot really look after them without some more qualified assistance. I privately thought my qualifications were a bit thin. I thought of the fourth form boys at Whitehill and profoundly hoped that his foreign boy would be better mannered and more manageable. I wondered how I ought to frame the question I wanted to ask about the pay, my board, and lodging. I suppose I took so long to think it out that he thought I had finished, because he patted the tips of his fingers together, patting the power pyramid, and said, very good, Miss Hazel. I shall let you know my final decision in the morning. May I know where you're staying?" I told him the Empire Hotel. That being the name of one of Miss Corrigan had given me. He rose and shook hands with me, and I moved to the door. As I reached it, he said quite sharply, "Miss Hazel." I turned around, surprised to see him indicating the chair again. Miss Hazel," he said when I sat down again. "You may think it curious, but when I saw you walk to the door, I made up my mind. A person's back, can be very expressive in motion." "Oh, is she wearing like a backless dress and she's slinking around so you can see all the muscles moving over her ribs? You are quite suitable for the employment I have in mind. If you please, we could settle the necessary details here and now." I remember feeling both puzzled and amused at this, but it was rather pleasing to think that I had acquired enough of the Towerton style, backless dresses and moving muscles across ribs, to impress him to that extent. So, after a few awkward hums and ha's on his part, it was settled that I should begin work that day and get £30 for the first 3 months. I hadn't the vaguest idea whether this was much or little for the job, but it sounded like a lot of money to me. And Dr. Ravlin wrote down the exact address for me. Ringstones Hall, Blaghill, near Staines Head. My wondering whether I could borrow the money for the trade and bus fare from Uncle Fred was cut short by Dr. Ravlin writing me out a check for £5. Let me see, he said. My reading at the British Museum will occupy me for several days more, and I hope I shall be at Ringstones in time to welcome you. But in any case, I will write immediately to Mrs. Sarkisson, my housekeeper, and she will have everything ready for you. I have to tell you that Ringstones is quite a very quiet country place, and you might even call it remote. We lack many of the amenities of town life, but I hope you won't find it uncomfortable. Whether you find it enjoyable depends on whether you can amuse yourself with outdoor activities. I think, from what you tell me, that you can." He smiled and added, "It's only fair to warn you that you'll find life with these children quite strenuous. But then, That was why I applied to Miss Corrigan to help me find someone for them. Finally, let me persuade you not to stay at the Empire. These big places are never very comfortable. I happen to know that there's a room vacant here, and you'll find beaches a great deal more to your liking. I took his advice, creepily, and looked after very well. Part 2 of Part 1. My aunt and uncle take pleasure in asking questions and refusing to understand the answers. Back in White Hill, I encountered a weight of disapproval that left me with just the same suffocating feeling in my chest as one of my aunt's Yorkshire puddings does. yeah, you know what, aunts and Yorkshire puddings. I have been away from Green Street long enough, however, to put up a better defense, I could say that, than I once could. I made great play with the argument. Not strictly true, but that job had been found for me by the college. But the one that weighed with Uncle Fred in the end was that I should be earning money instead of spending it. I did not tell him how much I was going to get. In any case, I had firmly made up my mind that no amount of Green Street disapproval was going to rob me of a holiday to which I was looking forward with such excitement. I had already sent on my trunk as passenger's luggage in advance from King's Cross, and according to my promise, I set out on the Tuesday after I arrived at White Hill, and reached Ringstones Hall safe and sound that evening. I've never been in this part of the North before. I found it very different from the country around White Hill. And a world away from the rich meadows and woods and sleepy little rivers around about Towerton. This is a country of bleak, blunt moorland hills. Black stone walls, stone cottages, roofed with black slabs, wind-twisted thorns and sycamores crouching in the hollows of lonely hillsides, gurgling brown, peaty little glens. Peaty burns. I jumped ahead. Foaming like beer over black rocks and narrow and rough little glens. There's the part that I read. Very air seems wider, emptier than it does in the south, and there's a loneliness in these tracts of shaggy, boggy moor, which I have never knew one could feel in England before. Ringstones lies in the very heart of the moors, in a valley whose stream is fed by the spongy bogs of all the surrounding hills. The nearest other houses are at Blaghill. I hate these names. A little hamlet 3 or 4 miles away across the moor. What a language. I had sent a telegram to Ringstones to say that I should arrive at Staines Head at 4:20 and take the next bus. I had some time to wait, and it was quite a long way from Staines Head to Blaghill by the road, so it was well on to the evening when I got down at the sharp corner of the road, which the bus conductor assured me was Blaghill. The few low houses lie up a glen away from the road, and you do not immediately see them as you alight. I walked, following the conductor's wave direction, a short way up the stony lane toward the hamlet, gazing round me with delight and a feeling of exhilaration at the high hills, so clean and fresh looking. You were just complaining about it earlier. So free in the broad extent of their stone-wall pastures and unfenced wastes of heather and bracken, into which, near the skyline, those pastures merged. The first thing I saw on Blaghill was a pony and trap hitched to a stone gatepost. By the pony's head stood a short, dark, sulky, and foreign-looking man. He touched his cap and said, "Ringstones?" in a questioning way, and at my reply, took my suitcase and helped me into the trap without another word. Nor did he speak all the way to the hall. For the first part of the journey, he strode along, leading the pony, for the rough lane led very steeply uphill. I had never ridden in a trap before. And the lane was so steep, and the pony plunged so suddenly and fiercely at the rises, tilting the trap at such a sharp angle that I clutched the sides, afraid that I should be thrown out of the thing. And I would have jumped out if I hadn't been more afraid of looking silly. Yeah. After, as near as I can judge, a mile of this plunging progress, we twisted suddenly between the 2 high banks tufted with heather and hair, pulling the pony momentarily to a stop. The dark man sprang very lightly into the trap and sat on the seat beside me, while the pony went away over the more level track on a trot. From that point nearly all the way to Ringstones, we followed a road or track, which, though rough enough, and frequently dipping down to fjords through little streams, capped on the whole to one level of a moor. We seemed to branch off from the original track, and then to branch again, and in the end so twisted and turned about the round dark tarns, that pallid gray-green mosses in between the miniature cliffs of peat whisker... Christ, I'm bored. I told you this is going to be boring. The long blue lines of hills that bounded the view were so featureless that I could pick up nothing on the skyline by which to obtain the idea of the course that we were taking. Only one thing, or a group of things, I noticed in all this tract of moor that I thought I might stand a reasonable chance of recognizing it again was that a number of big stones, all embroidered with gray and golden lichens, that reared up out of the heather away on our left and front, and which, as we passed within a few hundred yards of them, seemed to be situated on a wide, low, flat mound, tolerably free of heather and rising a few feet above the shaggy surrounding waste. Shortly after passing these things, our track went downhill, after running between banks for some little distance, turned sharply along the lip of the deep valley that I saw below me, the tops of trees, and a silver glint of water in the little level space of parkland, which made an astonishing contrast with the tangled steeps of bracken and heather and the bare gray crags that ringed it almost completely around. And in this little park, half concealed by some high and branching trees, stood a long, low, steep-roofed stone house, which I caught a glimpse from the brow of the hill, but which was lost to sight among the trees before we had gotten far down the steep road of the park. It's like reading Tolkien. Just like a whole chapter about walking through the woods. I did not know that it was possible to find a house so isolated and set in such unspoiled natural scenery in these days in this country. I suppose I have grown up in days and in places where angular plantations of pylons and skeins of wires strung across the sky and shiny bands of tarmac road curving over every hill are accepted as inevitable. The country round Towerton is reckoned some of the loveliest in England, and yet you are hardly ever in a spot where you can't see either an electric power cable, standard or main road. It had occurred to me as we were crossing the moor above Blag Hill that all the way I was seeing nothing that a Roman centurion leading a patrol beyond the wall would not have seen. Here, at the door of the hall, I thought there was nothing I could see that would not have met the eye of a straggler from Prince Charles's army. Mrs. Sarkisian, as I guessed her to be, met me at the door and exchanged a few words in a foreign language that I did not recognize with the man who had brought me into the trap. Her English, then, she spoke to me, was good. It was ordinary English. Not the well-nigh incomprehensible dialect of the Staines Head people. In fact, if it had any local tinge at all, I should say it had a trace of Cockney in it. She took me to my first room. I feel that, quote, room is the wrong word. It was a chamber, lacking nothing that should characterize a 17th century bed chamber, and containing nothing except my things, verb, to remind me of the 20th century. It's been a month. Leave me alone. What first took my eye that evening was the huge four-poster beds such as I had seen only in pictures before, and next, the deeply recessed mullineed window with its wide view over the park, a splendid picture of summer green and gold backed by rich browns and purples. A lattice of the window stood open, and into the bedroom came the murmuring and chuckling of ceaselessly hurrying water mingled with the whispering of leaves. As I stood there, with one knee on the broad window seat, gazing out, there came to me such a sweet, strong freshness of air that I felt I could draw in a deep breath as deep as to my toes, and still not satisfy my thirst for it. That's a way of describing it. I felt a pang of envy, a retrospective envy, as it were, for the lucky children who were spending their summer holidays there. If only I could have had a holiday in such a place when I was 15, ! Looking down at the inviting turf below and listening to that chuckling stream, I felt that I was going to make up for lost time. The family's tea, Mrs. Sarkisian said, was over, but there was something for me in her room. There, by the abrupt turns of little passages and a steep stair between the walls paneled with dark oak, she led me. The, quote, something, unquote, was a substantial tea, a boiled egg, scones, tarts, and bread and jam, cake, and more butter than I've seen in one dish in my life before. Ooh, it was spread on a clean scrubbed table in a wide, comfortable room with a window that looked out on a tiny stone flagged yard. A large, smoky blue cat was dozing on the print cushion of a wicker chair and raised a sleepy head to inspect me as I sat down. Oh, and then a canary hopped up and down in a cage hanging in the big window. Ugh. Part 3. The climax of my pleasure that evening and final assurance that my job was going to be a holiday came when I met the children. While finishing my tea and after that settling the various little pieces of domestic business to do with my ration book, my washing, shopping, and so forth, I had learned from Mrs. Sarkisian that Dr. Ravlin was back at Ringstones, but that he would not be free until dinner. I wanted before then to have got over what I looked upon as something like like the moment of receiving the question paper in examination. Bring it back to school. That's all she knows, it's just school. The first moment I felt would tell me whether I could do it or not. Whether my job at Ringstones was going to be a delight or misery. The children, Mrs. Sarkisian said, were somewhere about the house, waiting to see me. She had told them they were not to bother me until I had my tea. We went from her room through the house into the front hall. And there, she peeped through a door to a small sitting room. That's their room, she said. But they're not there. Wait a minute. I'll go and call them. She went away down a passage and left me to look round the hall. A wide oak staircase with one turn led up to a little gallery from which it seemed the upstairs passages led off. The banisters and rails were richly carved and turned. Oh, the hall itself was paneled nearly to the top of the walls, and there were several dark old paintings hanging up, but no collections of arms or heads of animals, such as I expected to see in such a house. I wondered, if Dr. Ravlin's predecessors had all been students like himself. Oh, she means pussies. And by one wall was a big chest ornamented with intricate brass work and studded all over with brass nails, and on the stone flags were several dark red rugs, which I thought must be Persian. I wandered around gazing up the dim pictures and finally came back to the foot of the stairs where I stood at the bottom step, leaning against the stout carved end post of the banisters and looking across the hall, out at the brilliant picture of sunlit grass and trees framed by the half-open front door. Well, that seems like as good a place as any to take a break. Why don't we learn about the latest upcoming books from Penguin Random House? In my basement. I'm bringing that bit back again. I'm trying to like my show again. So I'm going to bring you down to the basement like I used to back in the old days, and I'm going to tell you about a new book from Penguin Random House. Don't make that face. Just get in the basement. It's fine. I've never touched you. It's fine. Just go to the basement and go sit in the folding chair. I'll see you there. Oh, there you are. Welcome to my basement. I haven't done a thing with it since the last time I did this bit. So I think if I remember correctly, it's just empty with pools of water on the floor. Either way, take a seat in that folding chair underneath that naked light bulb while I stand here underneath this naked light bulb and play my guitar for you. I'm only getting better. Let me tell you about the latest upcoming book from Penguin Random House, The Art of Asking Your Boss for a Raise by George Perec. And it's translated by David Bellows. So it's multiple languages, and it probably doesn't make any sense at all. About the art of asking your boss for a raise, Quote, one of the most singular literary personalities in the world, a writer who resembled absolutely no one else, says Italio Calvino. A satire for the author's day, and oh yes, our own, on the subtly crushing effects of a corporate life. A delectable and philosophical office farce, Stephen Poole, The Guardian. Also, I hate this premise right away. I have never asked a boss for a raise because we live in a world where you don't get raises by asking for it at all. You never will. It's got to go through too many channels. Unless you work for a company that has like 5 people in it. But if you work for any company with like more than 100, they're going to be like, yeah, we'll put that through HR. And they're like, I don't know him. I'm not giving him a raise. And there's no reason to give you a raise. You just wait for your like 3% or whatever raise that you get like once a year. The art of asking your boss for a raise, neurotic and pessimistic, yet endearing, comic, and nevertheless then entertaining is a penetrating vision of the world of office work. Not really. As a translator, David Bellos writes, it shows us what computers, perhaps even those powered today by AI, simply cannot do. Make us laugh and make us cry. I don't know. I did a couple episodes with AI, and the last one, the AI decided to say that the woman's yellow hair was piss yellow, which made me laugh. And then I cried later, so I think it counts. This playful novel originated with a 1968 invitation from IBM. Then, searching for a writer to explore the use of computers in literature, Georges Parsec, took up the invite and programmed an early computer to follow the steps of an employee of a large corporation would take to submit a successful request for a raise. Perec himself was such a lowly employee at the time, his prospects of getting a raise as dim as those of the narrator of this tale. From the algorithmic experiment grew this pioneering and enduring fiction. When the fuck was this written? No, it's coming out June 24th. Is it a fantasy from back in 1950 with an IBM computer? 1968. All right. Well, that's a waste of time. The Art of Asking Your Boss for a Raise by Georges Parek, translated by David Bellos. It's coming out on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Bookshop.org, Hudson Books, Powell's, Target, and... Okay, I'm back. I'm trying to like my show again. Walmart! There, I did it. I don't care. This book sounds dumb as shit. Why don't we go back upstairs and keep reading... It's boring right now, but it's gonna get better later. Ringstones by Sarban. Well, there you go, turd. That wasn't so bad. You're back up here. You're safe. You're a little... moist and dewy from the basement, but otherwise, let's read the rest of this story. Suddenly, there came a swift, light pit-pat of feet on the stairs behind me, and before I could turn round, a cool hand touched me lightly on the back of the neck. There, a few steps above me, leaning down with one hand on the banister, was a young boy. Oh, he was arching his brows and looking at me with an expression that plainly said he was only waiting for me to smile, to burst into delighted laughter. I smiled, and he shouted with glee. New man, yeah? I asked, laughing myself. He nodded and became suddenly serious, studying me with thoughtful dark eyes. Oh, I knew, looking back at him, and steadily looked at me up and down, and we were going to be good friends. I had never seen so beautiful a boy, nor one whose face expressed such gaiety, and at the same time, such tranquility and wisdom. There was an innocence and eagerness, too. Oh, I thought, in that small brown face, a kind of wonder and desire to see and learn and know. All my misgivings about teaching vanished. There could only be joy in teaching Nuaman, because I noticed such things. I wondered at the perfection of the physical development. There was no awkwardness or gawkiness about him. He was dressed in a pair of, little green corduroy shorts, and a cream silk shirt with short sleeves. His face, arms, and legs were tanned to a lovely, light golden color. Oh, every slight movement he made as he leaned above me were revealed. a supple young strength and grace which I had never seen in any boy of his age before. Oh, he was so well formed. Oh, he's so beautifully proportioned that it is not then. See, I forgot that there was this angle going on in this story. Did I not then see how small he was for his age? Oh, I could not think of him in those few moments as someone who was going to grow bigger. I heard Miss Sarkassian's voice from the passage, and I turned the hall again. Nuaman swung himself down beside me as softly as a cat, and the two little dark-haired girls whom Miss Sarkassian shepherded before her were small enough, I suppose, with their prettiness, to be called doll-like, but it was their size only that suggested that. The comparison didn't dwell in my mind more than a second. The next instant I had thought of some kind of small gazelle I had seen somewhere. Not in a picture, but alive. Oh, they had just, what does that mean? But just the same rounded softness of body and limb combined with a surprising suppleness and grace. Like Nuaman's. Their dress seemed more than is usual with English children to set off their figures rather than cover them. I kind of forgot about this weird stuff with kids. Never mind, it gets better, I promise you. Their clothes were on them rather than they in their clothes. They both wore little white sleeveless frocks of pure silk, which lay smoothly to the curves of their bodies and made the suntan of their arms and legs glow more duskily by contrast with its gleaming whiteness. Their black hair was tied in broad white ribbons, and they wore white shoes and socks. They were creatures of summer, and some country of the sun. Nuaman introduced them, glancing from them to me as if he was well aware of their loveliness and proud of being able to show them off to me. They were shy, and I guess that they did not know English or English customs so well as Nuaman, for taking my hand and murmuring their replies to me, they looked at him to see if they were doing the right thing. Marvan and Einthe. I can't pronounce these names. Marvan and Ianthe. Einthe. Nuaman introduced them. They both look very much alike, he added with grave simplicity. But you could tell Marvan because he has black eyes, and Ianthe because she has brown ones. And he said something to them in their own language which made them lift their heads and look up at me. Oh, Ianthe's eyes are much too lovely to be called just brown, I said. I should call them onyx. Okay, so with past episodes, I've always complained about weird, bizarre sci-fi names. This counts. This counts as all the kids have weird sci-fi names, but there's a reason. You just got to wait till the end. There's a reason. It's not bad. It's not the same as like Kranthanos from Paragon or something. There's a reason, so just be patient. Yes, he said eagerly and came across to look into them as if he had never looked at Ianthe before. Onyx, he repeated to himself several times, trying over the new word and treasuring it. Are you twins? I asked the girls because they both seemed so much in age and so much alike, but neither they nor Nuaman, whatever, seemed to understand the word. When we parted, Nuaman touched my arm shyly, looking up into my face to see whether I minded his touching me, and then, when I smiled, he clutched my hand and exclaimed with the frankest pleasure, "You know, Miss Hazel, I shall like having you here." I went blithely into dinner that evening with Dr. Ravlin, and he put me a good deal more at my ease than he had done at the interview in London. Some formality remained, or what I thought was formality. Dr. Ravlin wore a dinner jacket, and we sat at the opposite ends of the large, highly polished dark table set with the fine glass and silver embroidered table mats, and we were waited on by Mrs. Sarkassian, who, in the office of footman and butler, wore a clean shirt and dark green velvet jacket. Having seen something of the doctor's ceremoniousness, I had changed out of my suit, in which I had traveled, and put on my best dress, which I had only worn about 3 times before, but I felt that the next night I ought to wear my evening dress, and promised to make up for the demands of this job, would make up my wardrobe by buying myself a new evening dress out of my earnings. I provided I could drive a hard enough bargain with my aunt over the coupons. I told you it's going to be boring. Just wait it out. It's going to get better towards the end. Here, in his own house, little touches of formality in Dr. Ravlin's speech and manners were attractive. They seemed appropriate to his style of living, to the old-fashioned house, and to his air of space and leisure, which was new to me. In a clumsy, roundabout way, I tried to convey this by saying how much I admired the hall and its setting and the way it had been maintained unspoilt. I said, or tried to say, that to live in such a place, in such a way, gave a sense of continuity that was lacking in most people's lives. I listened to my stumblings, remarks attentively. Continuity, he said. That's a very old puzzle, isn't it? The riddle of mutability that has vexed men's minds and set them in an unanswerable problem ever since the Egyptians of pre-dynastic times buried their dead crouched in the form of a question mark, ! We haven't answered the question yet. It is put afresh with every death of a human being. We seek, perhaps, some partial solution of it in generalization, in the concept of a genius that lives through individuals die. Oh, some of us can, as you say, fancy that we feel the thread at which the beads are strung, or by living where our fathers have lived, and extending by our own short span the work of past few generations, or a dabbling antiquarian like myself may grope a little further and elaborate the illusion. My ancestors, Ravlins and Pococks, have lived at Ringstones for some, 400 years. Before them had lived in this place for perhaps 600 years. There was a priory, fuck off, it's been a month, here which, on such imperfect evidence as exists, may be supposed to have been founded in the 10th century. Much of its fabric is knit into these walls, and the bones of some of its inhabitants lie under the grass on which you will walk tomorrow. But men worked here before the monks sang. There's a shaft of Roman-lead mine in the valley. Both iron implements and bronze ornaments and Celtic pattern have been found here. Then consider the tumuli of the Moor, chieftains of the Beaker folk. Oh, they pitched their everlasting mansions above a spot that could not have been more unknown to settlement, or at least to the seasonal camps of herdsmen and hunters. Yet before then, I read the signs rightly. Men, or beings at any rate, endowed with the ingenuity of imagination, resorted to this place for a purpose. We can guess as though the knowledge that inspired it and the arts by which it was furthered remained dark to us. Did you observe on your way across the moor certain standing stones? Well, they form out of these stone circles out of which the antiquarians, I'm saying it wrong. I'm going to say I'm doing it on purpose. Antiquarians will dispute forever. A stone circle, a magic circle, if you will, but one that marks the end of our little thread of continuity. Beyond that, we cannot even guess whose graves we dwell upon, unless indeed we chose to fancy that we see a lesson in the circle and say we dwell upon our own. But I don't know whether my air of polite attention made Dr. Ravlin think I was interested in the antiquities, or whether he was so absorbed in the subject itself that he could talk about anything else. I listened all through dinner and long after dinner was over, but often I did not understand what he was talking about. There are so many references to books and names and periods that meant nothing to me. But I suppose he had forgotten that he was not talking to a fellow archaeologist. I listened without being bored because I liked his voice, and liked, too, the atmosphere of crowded history with which his talk seemed to fill Ringstones. And if now and again my attention wandered from his philosophizing to his expressive face and his hands, and to the lovely china and silver and the fine old furniture of the dining room. Oh, she's going to steal stuff. I think I did not enjoy my evening any less for that. I was receiving compensation for many years of Green Street and appreciating every minute of it. When he at length made signs of rising, I realized that he had not once mentioned the children. There was a lot now that I wanted to ask about them, but he gave me little opportunity. However, before we got up from the table, after one or two ineffectual attempts, I did succeed in mentioning Nuaman, and he gave me a keen glance, then fidgeted with the things before him on the table. It had not been hard to guess that he was completely out of his element with children. Oh, he was plainly wondering what I thought about them, and I reassured him gladly. I think they're all three delightful. I'm sure I'm going to enjoy every minute of being with them. I only hope they'll like me. Oh, no question of that. No question! Exclamation point. He exclaimed. They will keep you busy, but you mustn't let them take all your time. There's studies, no doubt, of your own that you would like to pursue. Miss Corrigan, I believe, is greatly interested in biology. There's books here. I will show you the library. 4 dots. In vain, I tried to keep him to the subject of the children. I wanted, not biology, I wanted to know where they came from, what their language was, whether they had any particular ideas about the kind of thing that we should do together. He cut all that short by rising abruptly and saying in a tone of mock consternation, "But my dear Miss Hazel, I hoped you were going to do all that. Really, I know nothing about education of children, but I have by no means completed my own education yet. Please do whatever you think suitable. I'll leave them entirely in your hands. Or you, or you in theirs." Biology. Before such abdication of responsibility, I could only laugh and declare that I would do my best. Nothing could have pleased me better. For the first time in my life, I could do as I liked. Chapter 4. My breakfast was brought to me in my bedroom next morning by Miss Circassian. I protested at such unnecessary attention, and I would rather come down to have it with the children. They've had theirs and have been out for a couple of hours, she said. It's only 7:30. I was already dressed and had been on the point of going down, but I felt so guilty that I would have left my breakfast untouched in my hurry to redeem what I feared might have been bethought slackness. Miss Circassian, however, would not let me. I was not to worry about keeping the same hours as the children, she told me. The young man will be up before daylight sometimes. Sometimes he'll lie in bed till, noon. I let him do as he likes. Oh, he'll have his own way, he will. Her face was pretty well expressionless. I could not tell whether she approved of Nuaman or not, but as she seemed disposed and to be talked to, I chatted to her while I gulped down my breakfast. I said I hoped that the children didn't make too much work for her. It seemed a big house for one person to look after. Oh, there's always work, but Hagop does a lot in the house. Besides, the maid will be back in a bit. Your husband doesn't speak English so well as you, does he? I asked, except for the one word ringstones uttered when he met me. I hadn't heard him speak a word of English. Oh, he speaks it, she answered. But do you always speak Italian together? I said. She gave a short laugh. And said with great disdain, Italian? Now, N-A-O-W, we're Armenians. I said I supposed I must have been in England for a long time. I had been here 20 years. I came with Dr. Ravlin from Aleppo before the war. And the children? Are they from Aleppo too? She shook her head. I went out into the dazzling summer morning. The air was fresh and cool. But the cloudless sky promised a hot day. There was bird song from every side, and busy squabbling of jackdaws among the tall breeches of the house. I had not far to look for the girls. They were sitting side by side on the low stone wall that bounded the terrace. I had no clear idea how I was going to set about my duties, but I thought I ought to spend the first few days in getting to know the children and finding out how good or bad their English was before I could form any plan for improving it. The girls slid off their perch and immediately stood demurely side by side as I greeted them. They replied, "Good morning," carefully and with correct enough pronunciation, but they were baffled when I went on talking to them in an ordinary conversational way. They stood there with their heads bent, a little embarrassed smiles curving their lips, looking as uncomfortable as I should have felt if I had suddenly found myself being talked to, say, by a French woman. In French. The best beginning, I thought, was to get them all together. So I asked where Nuamon was. That or the name, though I didn't pronounce it right. They understood, and Ianthe, the brown-eyed one, pointed down the park. They would have fallen in behind me, but talking all the time in the hope of overcoming their shyness, I made them walk, one on each side of me, and in that way, with the occasional gesture from one of them to show the way, we crossed towards the beck. The turf we walked on was close and soft and springy, cropped short by the sheep, more efficiently than if it had been tended by a professional groundsman. For a wide space before the house was perfectly level. There was all the room one could desire for games, and as we walked along, I was already planning what we'd play with 4 people. The beck flows more toward the east side of the park, that is, the side away from where the road from Blag Hill comes down, and it, of course, is marked by a line of various trees, alders, willows, mountain ash, poplars, limes, and birches. Beyond it, where the ground is not too steep or rocky to give them root hold, there are plantations of pine and larch which climb the hillside until they thin out into scattered copses or huddled groups of trees all leaning together and straining away from the whip of the wind. At the bottom of the park, beyond a little oak wood, and the beck plunges between the 2 towering crags and then rushes down a deep wood glen. Glen, on its way to join the river Nither. I saw all this under the golden light of one of those mornings that compensate in one deep breath of their intoxicating air for endless winters of rain and drizzle and heavy skies and grimy fog. I felt that my eyes could never see enough of those innumerable shades of green, nor my ears have their fill of birdsong and the loud, long music of the water. Oh, I could feel the strengthening sun begin to pour on my neck and arms, and I smelt, SMELT, the warm sweetness of the deep old turf and all its tiny flowers. I had the absurd fancy that such a morning had never been known before in England, that these children, sun-browned themselves, clad as though to offer their bodies to the sun, had brought a richer and more splendid warmth with them from their eastern home to this little hollow to the north. When we reached the bank of the stream, I could still not see Nuamon. Without hesitation, the 2 girls jumped down and crossed the foaming water on the boulders, and I followed, and we turned down the farther bank. The turf grew coarser. Here, and the ground was softer and damper. We picked our way among the tufts and rushes and clumps of bog myrtle and around the cushions of moss stitched all over with tiny stars of white flowers. Here grew tall yellow flags and such a profusion of spotted orchises, not looking it up, as I have never seen elsewhere. It's a plant, who cares? Marvin and Ianthe, wearing sandals, splashed unconcernedly through the wet places, but I, being careful of my shoes and socks, stepped more warily, picking out the clumps of rushes and the occasional dark gray stones from my footing. Looking down in this way, I did not see Nuamon until we were almost upon him. He was sitting cross-legged on a large flat-top boulder that overhung the back. He looked up at our approach, which I am certain he had heard or seen long before I saw him, and cried, Hey, good morning, Miss Hazel. Cheerfully. Then he bent his head again over some little contraption that he was busy making out of reeds and twigs, and I sprang up to the rock beside him and glanced down at the stream hurrying away among its stones. Then at the boy's short dark curls and bent back. There was nothing ill-mannered in Nuamon's preoccupation with the handiwork. I felt, rather, that after our recognition of friendship, the night before he accepted me as an understanding companion with whom ceremony was out of place. I watched him while he worked. He had left off his shirt, and the sunlight, broken by the leaves of an alder, whatever, that grew beside the rock, patterned the clear gold of his naked skin. He was tanned very evenly, as if he had spent most of his time running about undressed in the sun. He wore nothing on his feet, which were well-shaped and strong. He had been used to going barefoot, I guessed, since his infancy. He worked very deftly with fingers that looked both strong and sensitive. I did not remember any of the weird kid stuff in this book. His little cage he was making, and it was put together with extraordinary ingenuity and skill. What you gonna put in your cage? I asked. He twisted his head around, yoink, and looked up at me with a quick smile. I don't know yet. I must see what I can catch. Perhaps a squirrel. Well, it's not big enough, I said. But are the squirrels in your country, too? Oh, yes, he answered, putting his work aside. Yes, there are squirrels in my country. What is your country? New Amman? No, he said, not New Amman. You must say it like this. He laughed and pronounced his name several times, urging me to repeat it, and clapped his hands when I got somewhere near the right pronunciation. He made a queer little stop in his throat just after the U, which I couldn't imitate well enough to please him. Well, I'm not going to try and figure this out. But I succeeded in drawing out the last syllable until he approved. What, New Amman? Is that what I'm supposed to say? I'm not saying that. Why am I starting to dislike this book as I read it when I liked it the first time I read it? Then he asked me what my other name was. Daphne, he repeated. That's an old name, isn't it? Nearly as old as mine. Look, let's go and look for a squirrel. Aren't you going to tell me about your country? Oh, another time. Oh, do come and look at this squirrel's house that we found. He jumped up and called something softly to the girls, who were loitering by the foot of the tree near us. Then, like a squirrel himself, he slipped. He slipped for the rock, and in 2 bounds was across the stream. I had come out with the intention of collecting the children and taking charge of them, but instead I found myself following New Amman, I'm just saying it that way, on a dancing, darting tour of the park. He went over the ground like a hare in March, or a untrained spaniel pup, raging back and forth to examine here a tree, there a tuft of moss, or a flower. He was as talkative as the girls were silent. The words came tumbling from him, sometimes in perfectly easy, colloquial English, at other times queerly misused or wrongly combined, so that I was puzzled to grasp his meaning. I could see his need for someone to practice his English with, but as I tried to keep up with this will-o'-the-wisp career across the park, I also agreed rather grimly with Dr. Ravlin that no one but a budding gym teacher would do. He led us in the other end of the edge of the oak wood at the lower end of the park, and there he leaned, laughing against the trunk of a tall, straight oak. There now, do you see the squirrel house? He asked. High up among the leaves, I could make out something that might have been a large nest of twigs and grass. Whether it was the squirrels or some large birds, I could not say. I had no idea whether there were squirrels in this part or not. Okay, well, where I live, there's squirrels everywhere. They're literally everywhere. Their population completely outmasses the human population. So the idea that you could go to a part of a country and be like, there's no squirrels here. Then you go to a different part and be like, there's squirrels here. Seems absurd to me. Shall I go and see if the children are still here? New Amman asked. The children? Oh, I see. The young ones, you mean. Why, I don't know. Would there be young ones at this time of the year? But you can't climb that, can you? The bole of the oak was straight and too thick for him to swarm up. While the first branch grew out of a good 12 or 14 feet from the ground, I myself could not have reached it with a standing jump. New Amman trotted back some yards from the tree, paused an instant, and before I had grasped what he was going to do, he dashed at the trunk, leapt up and touched it with his toes 6 feet from the ground. With the momentary purchase he gained, there sprang up and caught a horizontal bow. In a minute he was among the higher branches and hidden by the leaves, and I heard him call out, laughing, the children, the young ones, are not in the house. Now, I thought, this is a real test of my qualifications. Sure enough, in a moment, New Amman was calling out to me, "Oh, do come up, Daphne." And I could have climbed the tree, but I could not run up it the way he did, at least not without a few trial shots. The 2 girls, as I saw out of the corner of my eye, were looking at me expectantly. and I called out that I could come up the frock with the shoes I had on, but I would climb as many trees as he liked when I was properly dressed for it. He seemed to be perfectly satisfied and clambered swiftly down, swinging himself lightly off the lowest branch. There was not the slightest hint of showing off in his manner. Not even the faint, polite contempt of an English boy of his age would have for a girl who would wear such stupid clothes that she couldn't do things. I got them back of the house and began to talk about what we should do. My chief interest just then was in finding out something about him. Always Nuamon darted away from the subject of his country, his parents, and his language, and even the length of stay at Ringstones. He would not state exactly. We'd been here a long time. Years, he said lightly. All summer? I persisted, interpreting the exaggeration. Yeah, all summer. I say he would not tell me. Even so dearly I realized that it was not he and not the girls who was to be my chief concern. They were, for the most part, quite silent. All I could get out of them for a long time was a yes or no given. I generally felt, without any understanding of the question, I did, however, satisfy myself to some extent about their relations to Nuamon. You're not brothers and sisters? I had asked direct. Oh, no, not that. Cousins, then? Cousins? I don't understand. What are cousins? I explained. Yes, she said, and I had disentangled myself from the degrees of kinship more complicated than I had realized before trying to define them. Yes, something of the sort. And as if repeating the lesson to Marvin and Ianthe, he rattled away to them for a minute or two in their own language, quoted the word cousin, and impressing it upon them, as it seemed. We spent all that day together, indoors and out, ranging into every part of the park, peeping into every room of the old house, except for only Dr. Ravelin's own. I was amazed at Nuamon's acute observation and knowledge of English birds and animals and flowers. Often, it is true, he did not know the English names, and I had to confess my own ignorance so often that I grew ashamed of myself. But he seemed to know them all in his own language and to distinguish every one without hesitation. Marvan and Ianthe followed us in our comings and goings, always reserved and shy and a little behind. He gave them little orders, or what seemed like orders, in their language, always softly and gaily, and they obeyed promptly, fetching and carrying for him, as an English girl might fetch and carry for an adored brother years younger than herself. I had learned, however, that Nuamon and the girls were the same age. On the whole, I remember feeling well content when my first day work ended at the children's supper time, and I went up to my room and surveyed my day. It had been a strenuous one, and there was one more strenuous thing yet to do. I had to meet Nuamon's challenge. Luckily, I had sent on all my clothes to Ringstones. I put on my gym shorts, I had a jersey, and a pair of gym shoes, and slipped out into the park while the children were still at supper, and Dr. Ravelin was still in his study. Burp. Oh, burp. I found the oak tree again without difficulty. I paced back about as far as Nuamon had done and studied the thing. I had never attempted anything quite like it before, and I could see that it needed good judgment if I were not to bungle it or hurt myself. Then as I looked at the trunk of the tree, I saw there was something that made it a little easier, a slight rounded projection, about, the 6-foot mark. That, I decided, after examining at its close quarters, was where Nuamon had got his foothold. I drew back again and went at it. I did better than I expected. I got my foot on the projecting knob, but missed my grip on the branch above me. Still, I sprang backwards and landed on my feet without damage. I timed it better the next time and got a good grip on the branch with both hands. From there, it was just like an exercise on the beam in the gym, though I wished for my arms and legs' sake that the branch had been as smooth as the beam. But it was easy enough to climb up to the rest of the top of the tree, but just to make sure that I could do it quickly the next day, I went up and down again. I started the lowest branch again, holding lightly on the one hand and surveying my knees and elbows before jumping down. And then I started so that I all but lost my balance when a soft voice said, "They haven't come back?" "No, I don't expect they will. I saw them in the wood." There he was, dressed now in his green shorts and cream shirt, squatting on the grass below and looking up at me like a good-natured little goblin. And I lowered myself and sat on the branch and said, "Well, I've just finished my supper," he said. "Shall we go climbing now?" "Aha," I said. "Now I'm dressed for it, and you're not. We'll climb tomorrow. Just now I'm going to go and wash off this moss and black and make myself respectable for dinner." "Yes, your dress is very good," he remarked gravely. "I like it. You must wear it always." "It looks as good as I shall need it to," I said, "but I think I shall prefer a pair of slacks if there's so much tree climbing on the program." I hadn't realized my skin came off so easily. "Oh, you know," he said, when I swung myself down and you were walking back to the house, "I like girls who can make facts." "Make facts?" I repeated, quite baffled. "Why, yes. To jump up to that branch is quite a fact." "Oh, I see. You meant feet. We say make feats." "No, we don't. We say to do feats." He murmured the words over to himself for a time. Fact, feet, fact, feet. Then he asked, Is making a squirrel cage a fact or feat?" "Lord," I said. "Well, I suppose it's a fact that you made it, and it would be a feat if I made it." He laughed. And in spite of his previous mistake, I'm sure he saw what I meant. "Well, but Marvan and Ianthe," I asked him, "can they do feats, as you call it?" "Oh, yes, they can," he replied. "Katya is the one who's not really good at that kind of feat, but she can run. I hope you will run with me tomorrow." "Who on earth is Katya?" I demanded. He gave me a wondering look. "Why, Katya, who puts the things on the table and makes the beds and helps Miss Sarkassian." "Oh, the maid? But she's away, isn't she?" "Well, yeah, she's away at present," he replied without much interest. "But look, will you run a race with me tomorrow? With me and Ianthe, if you like." He wheeled and insisted, so that I had to make a promise, and I reckoned myself as good as anybody in the junior year at Towerton, over 40 yards, whatever. But from what I had already seen of Nuaman, I foresaw, without any doubt at all, that I should be only a fair second to him. Chapter 5. A fair second. While I hesitated what course to adopt with the children, my role was given to me by Nuaman, and I may have wondered in what capacity exactly I'd come to Ringstones and what I ought to be doing to earn my 30 pounds. But he had no doubts at all. I was to be his playmate. It suited me. I don't think I ever enjoyed any organized games, one half as much as the boundless fun of tearing about a park with Newman. But I never had such a chance to run wild before, and I didn't give a hoot that I was behaving more like a 15 than a 19. She's only 19? No wonder there's like weird sexual tension between these teenagers. I mean, she's an adult. It's still, I mean, it's not good. Okay. Only in the evenings, dining with Dr. Why? I like this book. I read this because it made me like my show again. But now I'm starting to hate this book. And it's so boring in the beginning. That's why I'm doing a long episode. It's going to get better later. I promise it gets better later. Only in the evenings, dining with Dr. Ravlin and having disguised myself as a young lady, did I have the occasional twinges of conscience. I never saw the doctor in the daytime. He said he kept to his study all day, yet I felt he must now and then catch sight of me and the children in our chasing about the place. He had never commented on the way I behaved, and I did not suppose that he expected from a girl of these days and deportment of one of Jane Austen's young ladies, but I certainly had a feeling that the spectacle of me prancing about the park in my skimpy gym trunks or my short Towerton tunic, which I wore most of the time, might jar on him. Might he not, glimpsing me racing bare-legged over the grass, have a wistful vision of long satin skirts sweeping that same grass and the ample folds of a furbellowed frock billowing with decorous grace upon as ladies picnicked there long ago. No, I think he's just looking at your bare skin because he's probably an old pervert. I need not have worried. I discovered that he had quite other visions of the forms which had paced his park before us. He proposed one evening that we would take a stroll. We went from the table, he in his formal black suit and starched shirt, and I, in my evening frock. And in the rich light of the sun that was touching the edge of Ringstones Moor, we walked slowly across the grass barred with the shadows of the trees. The stillness and peace of the evening were complete. The three kinds of sounds, I recall, seemed only to emphasize by their distinctness and the purity of the silence that they cut. The clear song of thrushes in the ash tree tops, the ceaseless monologue of the running water, and the far-carrying brawling. There is no other word for it, of a well-known lamb from the hill. "Do you see," said Dr. Ravlin, when we had reached a point about the middle of the level ground of the park, "do you see how the curve of the beck here seems to enclose a natural amphitheater? Think of it as we must have appeared before the trees were planted. At a level, both circular tract of sward, always green. See how the side of the hill there curves in a great bank round the western half of the circle? You would say a natural auditorium from which many thousands of spectators could look down into this arena. In Homer's Greece, such a spot would have seen the funeral games of kings. Heroes and gods themselves may have sat here to watch the athletes race and hurl the discus. And what splendid footing for the wrestlers of this ancient turf would give. He smiled and moved a few paces across the turf. These fancies, you know, are not unrelated to the facts, though they may outrun them. Not far away there to the south is a Roman camp. Here in the valley is a Roman mine, which shows evidence of having been worked for many years. There was undoubtedly a considerable population in the neighborhood of Roman times. Laborers, soldiers, engineers, officers, and functionaries. With the possibilities of such a spot in this escape, the eye of a Roman officer, was the Roman army on duty at the limits of the empire, less likely to organize as familiar sports as the British army in Egypt or in China? "Look," he said. He had paused at a spot I had noticed often before, where a big flat stone buried in the ground made the only break in the level lawn. "Look, round from this stone. It is the center of this level area of the park, and a circumference of the circle is almost exactly a Roman mile. You may run a Roman mile around the park, or even firm turf. I confess that I have galloped it often when I was a boy," he said. "Old John Pokey, who planted the park, left that strip all around the circumference to clear the trees as if he intended it for a ride or a racetrack. Or," he added after a pause, cocking his head and looking at me slyly, or as if he knew it was one. "Oh, no," he went on hastily. "I don't say there is any evidence. I am only too conscious that I look at this place with the eye of faith, which sees that what may not be there. If I think I see the turf very slightly depressed in that circuit, and if I think I can discern the faint lines of what may have been retaining bank, I am quite ready to admit that I am deceiving myself and that the chariots have whirled round this arena only in my fancy." I remember the sun had now dipped behind the Ringstones Moor, and we saw the rough hillside where Dr. Ravlin pictured the ancient spectators of the games under the shadow of approaching twilight, which shed on it a cool gravity of gray-green and blue-gray tones. Still, there was a pale golden refulgence, not looking it up above the hill, that sent distinct rays, like the spokes of a wheel, branching up and deepening blue of the sky above our heads, and the tips of the topmost twisted pines on the other hill behind us glowed softly still. Dr. Ravlin stared up into the western sky and at those far-stretching rays, and it was some time before he spoke again. "But the Romans seem a little remoter than our own great-grandfathers when we think by comparison of the eyes that must have watched with the intentness of a holy purpose. These same rays of sunset or sunrise from this spot where we are standing, this place was wholly an unthinkable age before the Romans came, where we see these rays unintermitting, diffusing rather than losing themselves in space and light. Those eyes saw each ray tipped with the figure of unending life. An arm of the sun extended them to a holy ankh, and that is not fancy. Or if it is fancy, it's one whose antiquity is recorded in stony fact. Perhaps you can't distinguish it now in this light, but look tomorrow morning, and you'll see on the hillside there a long sloping line roughly parallel with our drive that comes down from the track across Ringstones Moor. It is the trace of a causeway which led in very ancient times up from this level arena to the moor top, up to the stone circle. There, in that complex of standing stones, are set an altar stone and a sunstone, a line to look into the eye of the sun when he rises from behind this eastern moor. Can you tell I'm trying to make his boring stuff sound interesting? I don't think I'm doing a good job. He talked about megalithic monuments, Helaical rites, and a great deal of other learned matters while we sauntered back to the house. He was talking more to himself than me. Guesses, guesses, he exclaimed suddenly when, having reached the terrace, we turned to look back over the park. But someone new, in italics. The explanation was there in italics. The road from the stone circle leads back to the park. Something here has laughed at all those priests and laughs still at our learned arguments. He left me with a quick smile and a change of tone. My fancies may seem strange to you, Miss Hazel, but you might be no stranger among them if they were embodied. Okay, well, with that, that's the end of that. I think let's head down to the smoking room so I can explain myself. Well, there you go. Why don't you get yourself seated? You can see here on the coffee table of my smoking room is a baboon skull. And if you take the top off that baboon skull, you'll see that it is filled with cigarettes. Why don't you have yourself... Oh, I forgot that we have birds in here. It's only been a month, and I totally forgot about the bird bit. Go ahead, have a cigarette, and while we sit here and smoke cigarettes, why don't we think about... what are we reading? So... I did a long episode because I wanted to get through the boring parts. It's not that it's like deathly boring, but gothic romance, gothic horror, it's a lot of build up to get to the story. But this author does do a really good job being boring, explaining the characters, explaining the environment, and then works up to, which is some really weird shit. He gets into some really weird stuff towards the end. And apparently all of his books are like that, so I've ordered a couple more. But in either case, Daphne is kind of like the loser at school a little bit. Like everyone else has got shit to do for the summer, but she doesn't. So she stumbles across this because the weird teacher that hangs out with all the kids on their free time, like smoking cigarettes in the back of the parking lot, is like, there's this guy that wants to have one of you students come and take care of his weird kids. And so Daphne's like, I got nothing else. Everyone else is rich and they got stuff to do and I got nothing to do. So she goes and, she's known for fitness. It's Daphne Fitness Daphne. And so she's like sending her fitness clothes ahead of her to be there. And so she finally goes and she meets the owner of the place and he likes her back and says, I looked at your back and you've got the job. As she was leaving, that was weird. And then she meets the kids, but they won't say where they're from. They won't say what language they speak. They don't explain anything about why they can't speak the language. You can't figure out what language they're talking. The one boy, Nuaman, is kind of like in charge of everyone and just kind of demands stuff of everyone. So that's kind of creepy. And then the other two kids just kind of do whatever he says. So it's a little bit creepy. And that's kind of it so far. He's got her doing physical activities, physical challenges, climbing up trees and whatnot. And she's just got to follow him around and do whatever he says for the most part, just entertain him and then also correct his English. So it's kind of like, it's like people I knew back in the 2000s. I knew people that would like go to Japan to teach conversational English. So you were flown out there. They paid for you to stay somewhere. And then you would go to a classroom and teach all these like old people how to speak conversational English, and then you'd go back to your room, and then you'd have mandatory like drinking nights, kind of like happy hours. And basically, it was hell on earth. Like everyone, I knew like 2 people that did it. And out of those 2 people, they were like, it's horrible. You're a human slave. Like you're forced to go do happy hours to promote this company that does this thing. You basically can't go anywhere. You're not given enough money to do anything. So you're just kind of stuck in your room all the time. And then you wind up going to this classroom and telling all these old people, like you're saying twig wrong. It's twig. You're saying it wrong. And that's kind of it. And then they eventually get flown back home again. And so it's like, I wish I'd never done that. So that's kind of what Daphne's doing. But, you know, she's a fitness high school kid, which is weird to me. And then she is just kind of following this kid around. So that's what we know so far. Stuff has been set up. So hopefully I can have shorter episodes where more interesting stuff happens, if I remember this book right. But yes, there is clearly a weird sexual thing going on. I didn't realize she's only 19, and he's 15. It's still not good, but it's not good. There's nothing to say about that. There's no justifying it. It's not good. But there's like a weird sexual thing going on, which I'm uncomfortable reading. I kind of forgot about all that. But I promise it gets better later. So with that, I guess I'll get back to my life. I'm going to go to the Wisconsin Dells this weekend. I'm going to go to the Wisconsin. I'm taking my wife, who's never been to the Wisconsin Dells, to the Wisconsin Dells to see how white trash everything is. 2 of my other friends are going to go with us, so we're all going to go together. And my other friend is like, if she wants to see how white trash this place is, where it's like a lot of guys not wearing shirts, driving around their pickup trucks, just cruising up and down the town, trying to pick up ladies and stuff. Really gross. There's a bunch of women that are just looking for guys in trucks with no shirts on to date. It's really creepy. And also, water parks everywhere is the whole point. So everyone's in the water park. So we got a hotel. And then my friend said, why don't we make it really trashy? We have 2 options. One, this Wild West dinner theater thing where you sit down to eat dinner, and then these like on a stage, these people come out acting like they live in a small Wild West town, and then a bunch of like bandits come in to take over the town, and it's like this entire drama that plays out while you're eating steak, and then you're supposed to boo the bad guys and cheer the good guys. It's really weird. And I was like, yeah, that's weird. I mean, I guess we could do that. And he said, or a magic show. And I said, magic show. Let me check with the wife. Check with the wife. She's like, magic show. So we're gonna, they don't serve dinner at the magic show, but we're going to go to a magic show. We're going to spend all day floating around in a lazy river, getting drunk, and then we're going to get our asses up, put normal clothes on, go to the magic show for it's like 90 minutes long, and then go back home and then just reflect on the magic show. Oh, it was amazing what you do with those doves. So with that, thanks for listening. I didn't hate doing this. This felt better. So I will continue to read this book maybe next week. Well, it appears you found me in the part of the podcast I hate the most, where I tell you all about the places on the internet where you can find me. You can tell I hate this because of the sound effects making it sound like a stormy night in the drawing room of the damned. Now, are you cool? I like cool people. It's the reason why I got involved in this business to begin with, just to meet cool people, not losers. So if you're cool, feel free to go over to my website, nuzzlehouse.com. Don't bother looking for us on social media because we've given it all up after the election with how evil everyone is from Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. I shut it all down. But you can find us on Blue Sky, nuzzlehouse.bsky.com. I don't know. We got a Christmas album on our website, which we should do. Everyone should do when they get married, make a Christmas album. We got Just Stay in the Curious Mind, where we make paranormal smut, Masterpiece Auditorium review books, and Two Things, One Cup with Elton from Elton Reads a Book a Week. And since I think you might be cool, you can always just email me directly. glenn.nuzzles@gmail.com. But don't email if you're a nerdlinger or a dork. Now, back to business. can't believe I drank all of them already. There's got to be one left.